Okay. Fastest 1080p versus 1440p monitor. Huge difference.
So as far as competitive gaming goes, it doesn't really get better than these two monitors right here. We have the Zowie XL2566K and the Asus PG27AQN. I mean, I'd go as far as saying that all of my monitor testing has led to this moment right here. You know, these are the clearest monitors that you can buy right now. But which one is better? You know, is it the 1080p TN panel with DIAC Plus or 1440p IPS with ULMB2?
But what's the refresh rate? Don't frames win games? Optimum? What the refresh rate?
Both are 360 hertz. So,
oh my god, 360 hertz. Oh my god. I feel like a peasant with my little 240 hertz. That's so many more hertz to do more hurting on the enemy. Oh my god. But to be honest, like, yes, these would probably be the most competitive monitors, but if you're just like a regular dude, which most of us are, you don't need these like monitors to be good. You could get a 144 hertz or a 240 if you want to, do a slight upgrade, whatever. And the bulk of your work or training or whatever for your FPS or whatever game can be done on those monitors. Like these are luxury monitors. Emphasis on luxury. Okay, so I mean, and it's only gonna, you see like the pattern for monitors, like years ago it was only 60 hertz, then it like bumped up to like 144, then it got bumped up again to 240, then it got bumped up to 360. What's the next one gonna be, like 500 plus or something like that? So it's like a trend, it's a pattern, it's only gonna keep going. All right.
So let's start there, and it's important to note that these two 360Hz monitors are very different to a lot of the 360Hz panels that you'll actually find on the market today, especially those first ones that came out, like the Asus PG259QN. That first gen 360Hz monitor, I wasn't a big fan of how that looked and how it felt to play on. You kind of just get this overly smoothed out image because the response times aren't really that fast to keep up with a 360Hz panel. These ones though are super quick, to the point where you can actually notice that bump from 240 up to 360 hertz. It's not a game-changing difference, I'll never say that, but it is one that you can actually notice now if your games can run at 360 frames and above.
Okay, and that's another thing. So few games are optimized that well to support that many, to support this like type of refresh rate. Granted, it looks cool. Like when I went from 144 to 240, I could still tell the difference. You just wiggle your mouse around and you can tell, like, oh wow, this feels way more fluid. But I don't know how it feels to go from 240 to 360. Maybe you still get that feeling of, oh my god, I can feel it. And even for the next bump, what's after 360? 500? Is that feeling still going to be there? I don't know.
It is a more fluid and smoother experience. But that's about where the similarities end for these two monitors. The biggest difference that I want to talk about today is resolution, right? 1080p versus 1440. The Asus here has 78% more pixels than the Zowie, and it is a pretty obvious difference. Everyone that I've spoken to who has made that switch from 1080 to 1440, not one of them has regretted it, and yeah, personally, I do find 1440p more engaging and immersive to play on. You kind of just feel like you're a bit more involved in what's happening, even just for competitive shooters. But does it make you play better? Do you land more shots? Are you able to spot enemies better, and track them better? Personally, I think no, but it also depends a lot on the game you're playing. Overwatch 2, for example, every enemy target has a red outline, so, they're pretty hard to miss even at 1080p or 720p even.
Yeah.
So yeah, at 1440, things do definitely look nicer, textures look better, every model is a lot more detailed, but it's definitely not the difference of you hitting or missing shots. Also, something kind of interesting in Overwatch is the higher resolution you go, the thinner those enemy outlines become for some reason.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of pay to lose if you think about it. Like dropping all the way down to 720p, things of course look super.
Oh my god, I did not realize that. Like, look at this. Like, it's a big, chunky, thick red line on 720. And then 1080, it's like kind of like normal, what everyone would look like. And then this, it's like thinner. I think the higher the resolution or whatever, and the higher the refresh rate, they need to start adding like options to like to like customize this line or whatever, which is hilarious to say. But I mean, hey, if that's what it's coming to, that's what it's coming to.
Super blurry and shimmery, but man, the enemy outline there is just kind of OP. This is about the only game where I've actually seen this though. CSGO, for example, doesn't have any enemy outlines at all, and in Valorant, it's more like a glow on the character model itself, which doesn't react with changes in resolution. So yeah, in those games, bumping up to 1440p is basically just a buff in overall detail, and you know, having a more detailed game world, I believe it can only help. Like, in no scenario will a less detailed model be better. So the extra pixels on the Asus are definitely a nice experience. Even for these ultra sweaty games like Overwatch, CSGO, and Valorant, it's not necessarily going to make you better or see targets easier by any means, but it is a more fun experience. Kind of leads into my next point. You know, one of the biggest things that I've noticed moving up to 1440p is how much less, you know, shimmery and noisy the maps look as you're moving through them. So most people play these FPS games with anti-aliasing off. It makes everything look a bit sharper and of course cuts down on the processing quite a bit. And at 1440p, you
that's another thing to note. If you're like at all like competitive in a like any FPS game, what's the first thing you do when you boot up an FPS game? You drop all the graphics to low, extremely low, dirt low, molten core, earth low. So that way all the textures are like just clear, or not clear, but like just matte. There's no texture, and you bump the character detail all the way up because you want to be able to see that little detailed character the moment they pop out from that corner. All right, that's the only thing that matters. And this is a trend, like I said, through across all FPSs. They all do it. All right.
You do notice way less of that stair-stepping and shimmering. Things do look way cleaner. And so the only games where I feel there is a legit competitive advantage at 1440 compared to 1080 are games like this, Battlefield and Call of Duty. You know, games where there is so much foliage, so much grass and trees and, you know, so much detail. And of course here, the fights are a lot more long range as well. Like in these games, I would take a 1440p 165Hz panel over a 240Hz or even 360Hz 1080p because that extra image detail at 1440 does actually kind of give you an advantage. But 1440p is definitely a double-edged sword.
Okay, yes, it's double-edged sword. So the thing with like the higher resolution is, okay, so for like the optimum competitive like size of like a monitor or whatever, as far as like 1080 goes, I think it's like what, 24 inch, like the diagonal or whatever, or 24.5, I don't know exactly. Like that's the best one. Well, not the best, but that's like the most preferred, I guess. And then anything else above that, if you like a bigger screen, then it would probably be worth it to get a 1440 panel. Like I think what's the ideal like monitor length on that? Like 27 inch or something like that for the corner to corner. But you have to understand with that, however close you like sit into your monitor, you have like when you get a bigger monitor, you have to like sit farther back, and your eyes have like this like length to like your monitor, so your eyes you like are gonna be able to like adjust and like dart up to the corner and look at like the map or whatever, something on the bottom, something on the top, whatever. And when your body's farther back, you can't really see as well, as stupid as that is to say, when you're like really far back, because, you know, anytime there's like any competitive computer game, what do we always see? The camera people zooming in on all the people are like facing the monitor like that. Like why they do that? No, I'm actually just joking. You know, it's never like it is pretty up there. They're in there for the most part, but like that is something to take into account. Like to notice all this like resolution from like the 1440p, you have to increase your monitor size and you have to like sit back a little bit.
It looks much nicer to play on, but it is definitely harder to run. Most people now, if they upgraded their 1080p monitor to a 1440p one, they would experience noticeably lower frame rates and higher input lag. How much you'll notice that though, it really depends on what GPU you're running. So for example, in Overwatch 2, all those settings, an RTX 4070 can fully saturate that 360Hz refresh rate both at 1080p and 1440 on average, but at 1440 I did notice some team fights with lots of abilities and ultimates start to dip below that 300 FPS mark. Also, since GPU usage is higher at 1440, PC latency saw an additional 6 milliseconds despite both tests having NVIDIA Reflex enabled. But on the flip side, you have games like CSGO, Valorant, you'll see much smaller differences there. A 4070 would definitely be sufficient, and so 1440p 360Hz would be totally fine. But yeah, Overwatch...
Bro, I'm still on a 2080. I am so not with the time.
Apex, Call of Duty, Battlefield, I definitely recommend a 4080 or even a 4090 to really get the most out of 1440p.
Bro, you know what's funny to me? Whenever they come out with all these like different NVIDIA cards where it's like 4060, 4070, 4080, 4090, it's like, bro, everybody always wants just the best one. They, the people that make them will come out and be like, oh, there's a graphic card for every target audience person to fit your desired needs and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, everybody just want to get the good one. All right. I don't want to be the fucking joke ass friend in the friend group with the 4060 when everybody else got the 4090. All right. Just give me the 4090. But if you want the 4090, you got to pay exponentially more. It's cost like way more. And it's going to be like that with the 50 series and the 60 series. And it's going to be like that forever.
360Hz. Otherwise, you will see a drop in performance versus just sticking with your 1080p monitor. But what about the latency of the panels themselves? The 1440p has more pixels, has more colors. Surely it is slower to drive than the 1080p one. So to test this out, I pointed an ultra slow motion camera at both monitors side by side, receiving the exact same input. And I basically just wanted to see which monitor would respond quicker. And the result is so close that sometimes the Zowie would be a little bit quicker, and then other times it would be the Asus. Basically,
is that a good test then? If you get like a 50-50 type like outcome?
It's just whichever monitor is closer to starting a new screen refresh. And of course, if I play them in real time or even just at 50% or 25% speed, they both appear to be responding at the exact same time. I also ran a latency test within NVIDIA's LDAT software, and I saw 1.6 milliseconds on both displays. So, I mean, as far as input lag goes, both monitors seem identical. Now, IPS versus TN is another big difference between these two monitors. Viewing angles, I couldn't really care too much about. You're going to be looking at the monitor.
Yeah, most people, when it comes to like competitive FPSs, they don't give a shit if they got someone sitting on the side, and then when they look at it, they see nothing but black. All right? I want the best visual experience from about 1 to 2 feet in front of the monitor. All right? That's me. That's all me. Okay? Nobody cares about viewing angle.
Straight on anyway, but the colors are very different. And look, the colors aren't terrible on the Zowie, but you do have a lot more depth and color information on the Asus. So a game like CSGO, it actually looks pretty good on the Zowie, but then you have games like Overwatch and Valorant, way more colorful. It's a much better experience on the IPS. And we're not so much talking about color accuracy here. The 2566K does actually have pretty accurate colors for, normal web use, for example, but it's the total amount of color that it can display. It's really small compared to the PG27. So pretty often you'll see like color banding and blobbing, which is non-existent on the IPS. Now those extra colors,
Bro, this level in general is just, I see all yellow. Maybe that's a problem with my monitor.
It's not like it's going to help you win games or anything like that, kind of like the extra pixels. It's a bit of a stretch to say that, but again, it does add to the experience, and for me at least, does make it more enjoyable to play on. Now, both of these monitors have a below reduction mode that you can enable. On the Zowie, it's called Diac Plus, and on the Asus, it's called ULMB2. And on most monitors, this setting is not really worth enabling. It's usually not tuned that well, or maybe it's not suitable for the specific panel that it's on. but here it is pretty much as good as it gets. And I'll say it again, you know, these modes, they're not like doing any processing or adding input lag or anything like that. All it's doing is strobing the backlight on and off. So each frame, instead of being shown for the full frame duration, it's shown and then hidden. Now this strobing can't be seen by the human eye at 360 Hz. Some people are sensitive to it at 240 Hz though, and certainly at 144 Hz and below it can be a lot more noticeable, but at 360 Hz, this strobing is totally invisible on both the Zowie and the Asus. I have a small section in another video which explains in detail how this works and why it reduces the eye tracking motion blur that we see, and I'll leave that video linked down below. But basically, Diac Plus and ULMB2 both are extremely good. ULMB2 is a bit more advanced though, it has a few more things happening, and it does produce a cleaner looking image with less double imaging. Honestly, if you buy either of these monitors, this is definitely a setting that I'd recommend switching on and testing out for yourself. You do need to be running at least 360 FPS though consistently if you're running the strobing at 360 Hz, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, ULMB2 on the PG27.
The Alienware 500 Hz. Yep, that's the next. Well, you can't even see it, but this image is 500 Hz, and this is this one. Oh my god.
7 AQN, you cannot get clearer than this, and that plus 1440p just makes for an ultra sharp experience. I quickly want to mention the 240Hz OLED as an alternative here. This is what I'm personally using, mostly because the image quality is so good, and I do feel like 240Hz is enough for me personally.
Same.
The price is pretty similar to the PG27 IPS. Main advantages are that you're getting a much deeper looking image, slightly wider color range, and also some of the best HDR performance that you can get today. Main drawbacks, doesn't get nearly as bright, although I do find it to be enough, and the 360Hz with ULMB2 on the PG27 AQN does make motion and tracking a bit clearer. But yeah, I'm still really enjoying the OLED. I'm probably going to keep using it until the 480Hz model comes out next year. Personally, I just can't unsee that beautiful OLED image. However, if you primarily want the least amount of motion blur possible, PG27 IPS is definitely the way to go for now. So I guess the big picture here is that, you know, 1440p 360Hz, most people would assume that it is slower than a 1080p 360Hz, but it actually can keep up in terms of response times, in terms of input lag, and the blur reduction mode is actually superior, which is pretty surprising to see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you.
And another reason why this is good, you know, because for the longest time, it was all about the BenQ Zowies or whatever, and like Diac Plus and whatnot. It's good, at least for the consumer, to have another competitor in like competitive, you know, monitors. All right, it's because they see another competitor, they got superior technology to reduce all the double vision and whatnot. So what is Zowie gonna do? What is BenQ gonna do? Well, they gotta come up and they gotta start putting up too. You better show up, man, because if you just leave this out here, gamers are gonna wise up and be like, hey, I want the best monitor, don't give me that secondhand BenQ Zowie shit. All right. So yeah, this is also good. This is just good for the consumer.
See you all in the next one.
Power and energy.
Oh Jesus. No, not now, Andrew Tate.
So as far as competitive game,
okay. Yeah, this is a good video. I had no idea that 1440 was about on par, you know, for 1080 when it comes to 360 Hz gaming. You know, I was always like under the assumption of, you know, just stick with 1080 and get the most hertz out of that at, you know, 24.5, you know, monitor width or whatever, and you're good, you're chilling. It's good to know that there's another competitor on the scene to give BenQ a run for their money. I mean, like I said, that's good. But yeah, I mean, that's about it. Thanks for the heads up, Optimum Tech. Good video. I want to see more, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right, later.